Welcome back to the channel. I don't plan to react to the full Piers Morgan episode, but I saw Candace Owens was on here, and I'm curious to see what she has to say. I'm curious to see what's about to happen because although I understand the aspect of being anti-war, 100%, I am anti-war as well, but everything comes within context. The thing about Candace Owens that makes this a little tricky is because I can't tell if she's anti-war or she just anti-Israel. And with how she left the Daily Wire and all her Jewish compatriots and her recent rhetoric kind of protecting Kanye West, and she had tweets like this and this, like calling Netanyahu Adolf Hitler and saying that Israel needs a regime change. Now, you may argue that these are reasonable things. I wouldn't argue that, but you may argue that. One thing I could definitely say is that within the context of Israel and Palestine, at first I was like, yeah, I understand why they want to rebuttal, is that the right word? Counter the fact that Gaza or the Hamas attacked the Israelis, did some terrible things on October 7th. And then after the ceasefire that happened during Joe Biden's administration, Israel has just become unhinged. And one thing that I've said throughout this entire conflict is that I understand Israel, I understand Palestine, I understand they have a very complicated history. I have a book back there that I had to read for something that I was doing. As of right now, it's very clear that even though you understand why they have to deal with Hamas, a terrorist organization, the far-right movement in Israel is problematic. That is undeniable. With that said, enough of me talking. Let's hear them talk. Let's dive into it.
Stages yesterday, including as news of the Iranian retaliation was breaking. Candace, welcome back to Uncensored.
Thank you. It's good to be back, just in time for World War III.
Well, yes. Well, before we get there, how is motherhood treating you?
Motherhood is treating me great. I'm exhausted, as is to be expected with the newborn, but always a blessing.
Well, indeed it is, and I wish you all the very best with that. Okay, let's talk about impending World War III, as you put it. You are implacably opposed to what both Israel and now the United States have done here. Why?
Yeah. Because, well, first and foremost, just on the MAGA movement level, Trump came out and he gave us a promise that we were not going to be involved in wars. And I'm going back to 2015. Why did people get so excited about Donald Trump, who was then an unlikely candidate, who was being smeared by the media as being Adolf Hitler? Well, it was because he recognized that the American people were being forgotten while we were giving billions of unaccounted billions, by the way, for these never-ending wars. And so it's one of the earliest reasons that people got behind him and got behind his vision. And so we're opposed to a regime change.
So when engaging in these conversations, I think it's very important to meet people where they're at different political points, right? Obviously I have issues with certain people in the MAGA administration. You guys know that if you've been watching my content. Well, I feel like we can get on the same page with the idea that foreign conflict is not good for society moving forward. We should have moved past that era. I know I live in a privileged era because I never have to deal with like big, large scale wars in my lifetime. And that's where we should move towards diplomacy, right? Negotiation. Now, that doesn't alleviate the idea that there are some countries that treat people terribly with horrible human rights violations. And I wish we can engage in that conversation. But bombing multiple Iran nuclear sites because you're fearful of them having nukes, that's a touchy one. That's a tough one. Apparently, there's also a report that the bombing only delayed the nuclear capacity for only a few months. Now, first CNN reported it, and then Donald Trump said it was fake news. Then the New York Times said that we have a file clarifying and confirming this as well. So at this point, it's basically confirmed. I understand the concept of not wanting to engage into war, but one thing that I will always say is that we are America. We are the best country in the world. I am very patriotic to an extent. I have an American flag in my room. If we have the capacity to push the ideals of freedom and equality, I don't see why we wouldn't. Obviously, we have to do it in a diplomatic way. But if we can help people create a better world, we should. Now, do you have enough faith in the country and the people in charge to do that? That's a different conversation. So we can have two. We can have a conversation on what America's values should be, what America should do, versus is our leadership capable of doing that? Now, I personally don't think Donald Trump is capable of doing that. And Candace Owens articulated it perfectly. He lied to his populace. He lied to his base. He didn't care about the idea of no new worlds, no new wars. He just said that to get your vote.
Because America as a country has a lot of problems that need to be fixed here first. It's that simple.
Right, but it's not quite that simple. And I'll explain to you why. Because Donald Trump, I think he's not been inconsistent in the sense that in his first...
This is going to be interesting because Piers Morgan pretends that he's a moderate, where instead, in factuality, he is a Donald Trump shill. Whereas Candace Owens has started criticizing Donald Trump and MAGA. So we'll see how this plays out.
First term, he wasn't a pacifist. You know, he killed General Soleimani. He killed Baghdadi, the head of ISIS, and went after them ferociously. He attacked Syria when they killed American troops. You know, he dropped a massive bomb in Afghanistan. It wasn't like he never deployed the American military. And again, here, what he would argue, and has been arguing.
Well, Piers, you just prove Candace's point unironically that in his way to being elected, in both his first term and especially his second one, he has said repeatedly that he did not want new wars. Matter of fact, he said this about Kamala Harris. So the fact that you're pointing this out very much so proves that Donald Trump never believed this claim in the first place, that he was involved in multiple international issues in his first term, which I knew. A lot of people who really pay attention to this knew that. But you thinking that this is a point to prove Donald Trump is not a hypocrite, you actually proved that he's been a hypocrite since the beginning.
Is he's not declared war on anybody. What he's done is very specifically target Iran's nuclear capability because of latest reports coming out, which said they had taken the enrichment of their uranium stocks from 3.5% to 60%, and that therefore the leap to weaponization was moving at a pace that couldn't be tolerated. I got to say, I kind of agree. Now, if he suddenly commits, troops on the ground, then that becomes a different thing altogether. But even when Trump talked about regime.
Now, the report is a little wishy-washy. We can't really confirm. And also the MAGA administration lies consistently, especially considering Tulsi Gabbard indicated that they didn't have that capacity. Here, this is where I'll bridge the gap, because I hate Donald Trump and I hate the MAGA administration, but it's not because I'm a Democrat and want a Democrat to get voted in. It's just I have integrity and values, and I think Donald Trump and MAGA is evil, personally. But that's how we can move past that. There is a legitimate conversation, legitimately, that if Iran had the capacity to utilize nukes, then that is something Israel and the United States of America do not want. That is a legitimate and very fair conversation. We do not want our enemy. And I know this is a new thing that a lot of the far left have been jumping on this, and even far right. So I guess woke right and woke left have been jumping on this, where they're trying to humanize Iran. Iran is not our ally. So if there's a situation where our enemy has the capacity for a very dangerous weapon, we should do something about it. However, something that I will enter into the conversation is, without verifiable proof. I don't know if what I've seen is verifiable proof. I don't think I've seen enough to say that that is a factual claim at this point. Doing an attack in this situation seems more like a distraction to me than something to protect the United States' interest. And also, the whole idea of trying to play moral justice warrior, where it's saying we're saving the people of Iran, that is also seems very manipulative to me. So there's so much nuance to this, and I wish we can stick to the facts, but we know how the politics game works. It's all about narratives and rhetoric.
Change, I think he meant from within, as we saw in Syria in December, where the people themselves rise up. And if that was to happen, why would that be a bad thing?
Okay, so you're asking a lot of questions here. So first and foremost, the idea that you have to formally declare war on like a piece of paper in order for war to happen is a little bit ridiculous. I mean, he dropped bombs. He dropped bombs.
I agree with Candace. Like, that is very much ridiculous. Once you attack the soil of another country, that looks like it's at the very least beginning process of war. I would be curious, and if someone knows this, I'll be curious to see if there's any kind of international legal way for this to be okay. It's hard for me to buy that, because even though the United States and Iran have a ceasefire deal, Iran and Israel have been going at it nonstop despite the ceasefire deal. And I know people have said it hasn't kicked in yet. Iran and Israel have been fighting after the 12-hour threshold as well. Matter of fact, Donald Trump crashed out and was cussing at both of them. Here's the clip.
We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the fuck they're doing. Do you understand that?
Do you have to respond to Iran?
So, as you guys can see, it's not that simple, right?
In Iran. So yes, we are a part of this war, whether we like it or not. Iran is now speaking and saying that they're going to shut down the Hormuz Straits. There's going to be impact on oil.
Why would they do that? Why would they do that when the main victim of doing that would be Iran? I mean, 50% of China, of the traffic of stuff through there is for China, which is one of their allies.
Don't care, not my business. The point that I'm making here is that to make the assumption that you can just drop bombs on a country and then say, well, you know what, we didn't formally declare war, is patently ridiculous. I think that is just patently ridiculous.
What about when he killed General Soleimani, one of Iran's top military commanders?
Sure, an assassination, a strike, and that, of course, came with some risk. It's a little bit different to be flying out B-6 bombers in the middle of the night and dropping bombs at the behest of Bibi Netanyahu, which brings me to the second point. The reason that America wants a regime change in Iran is because Bibi Netanyahu is demanding it. And that answers the question as to why there is this split in the MAGA movement. What we are seeing right now is the infiltration of Israel first people, the neocons, people who have always wanted never-ending wars, and the people who have recognized that following Israel's foreign policy initiatives has led to America being on the decline. And so that's where I stand. I am with the MAGA people who grew up, I call us like, Generation 9/11, who were told that America was going to be rendered safer, cleaner. All we had to do was agree to go to, well, ironically, war with Iraq because of weapons of mass destruction. It's all of the same rhetoric dating back to 9/11, all of the same tactics of trying to smear people who are against this war as supporting jihadists. It is not my business to
I wish I was too young in the time of the Iraq war to really understand what was going on. Like, I was way too young. I was a child. I was in elementary school or something like that. So I can't really contextualize what actually was going on in that time. I think the general consensus is that there was not enough verifiable information for Bush to send people to Iraq to go after the weapons of mass destruction that was being claimed. I am curious when these people, these citizens in America, say they don't want to be in these type of international conflicts. I would be curious to, at the very least, ask them, if you think that there is a, let's say, dictatorial leader, a person who treats his citizens like scum, a person who is a danger to not only his people, but to every country in the region, how would you deal with that? Like, that's a genuine question. How would you deal with that? Would you just let it go and see what happens, or would you be more willing to get involved? And I guess, to be fair, there are countries like that. I mean, could you argue that North Korea commits a lot of human rights violations? Potentially. It's so tough. It is really tough. Diplomacy versus what is right. It's a hard thing to fathom at the international level.
To affect a regime change in Iran. It's simply not our business. It doesn't impact us one way or the other. And we also are completely done with the idea that with these decades-long idea that we're doing it to spread democracy because we believe in international liberalism. There was no imminent threat to the United States when Trump made this decision to do what Bibi wanted. And I want to be clear here. This was not Trump's decision. It was Bibi Netanyahu's decision. And that is the reason that he did it. And we're very
I mean, are you calling Trump a puppet of Netanyahu? That's kind of what it sounds like. That's what it sounds like to me.
very aware that Israel is dictating our foreign policy, and we would now like that to stop.
Okay, but you wouldn't disagree, presumably, that Iran has been the main sponsor of terrorism in the Middle East through the Houthis, through Hezbollah, through Hamas. I mean, that's widely accepted and recognized. They've done
It widely accepted. No, that's just kind of
really. You don't think they
Israel
have?
has been a terrorist state. Okay, Israel right now.
All right. I mean, that's all I got. That's all I got for today's video. Again, that's why I have the question. Is this a situation where Candace is anti-war, or does she hate Israel? Why does she hate Israel so much? I mean, I understand why the leftists hate Israel. Does she have this newfound moral value system where she cares about a mass amount of people's lives? I don't know. That's hard for me to buy too, because I feel like she would be perfectly okay with throwing out these illegal immigrants and what ICE is doing. So she cares about the Palestinian lives, but she doesn't care about legal immigrant lives in America. I just don't. It's hard for me to buy what Candace is selling. It's something just not clicking there. But I don't want to make this video too long. You guys can watch the full one on Piers Morgan's channel. Let me know what you guys think. Like and subscribe. You have a good one. Take care. Peace.